Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Creating a Better Experience in Senior Care with Sales Enablement. We're excited to have you with us today. And we're going to go ahead and get started, hop right into it, and kick us off with some quick introductions. I'm Juli Durante. I am one of the team leaders and a marketing strategist here at SmartBug. I've been in the marketing world and a HubSpot user for over 8 years. One of my very favorite things about my job is helping sales and marketing teams optimize their performance, whether that means we're working on a sales enablement project, and we're going to talk a whole bunch about sales enablement tools today, or doing conversion rate optimization on websites and everything in between. I live in New Jersey and truly love Bruce Springsteen, and my bio says I'm likely drinking black coffee right now, and in fact, I have a cup in my hand. Joining me today is Jeff Howell of AlayaCare, and I will let him introduce himself.
Thank you, Julie. I'm excited to be here. I am matching your black coffee with one of my own. So AlayaCare is the largest home care software company in Canada and the fastest growing in the world. And I oversee the sales and marketing efforts. My motto is that we move fast and we fix things, not like Facebook breaking things. And in the time that I've been at AlayaCare, there really hasn't been anything that we haven't looked at trying just to break through the noise in what is the attention economy of today.
Thanks, Jeff. So our agenda for today is really to discuss the tools of sales enablement, and we're going to start with probably your biggest sales enablement tool, your CRM. We're going to talk about some sales engagement solutions and features of those solutions that can help you be more successful. We'll dive into some call tracking and do quite a bit of discussion around using video in your sales process. And then towards the end of our webinar, we'll have time to take some questions and answer them as well. So as we were putting together this presentation, we found this great quote about sales enablement and the impact it can make. And this comes from the HighSpot State of Sales Enablement 2019 survey. It just came out. And the piece that I really wanted to share was those with a formal charter, vision, and strategy for sales enablement achieve 12% higher win rates, 35% more quota attainment, 15% less turnover, and twice the amount of formal collaboration at their companies. And I think we can all agree that any one of those things happening for a sales team would be a good, positive change. But could you imagine what could happen if you adopted the strategies and tools to help you do all four? So hopefully this conversation today will be inspirational in helping you get that started. And if you have questions, we're always here to help. So the first thing that we will talk about is CRM. And when I think about CRM, there's one big question that always comes to mind, and something that I think we should all ask ourselves is, when it comes to your CRM, have you gotten the basics right first? Is your team using CRM, or is your sales team really working out of their email? Are they harnessing the tool that's in front of them and the power that it has? Or are they working on paper and managing their own spreadsheets and just trying to keep things moving and then putting stuff in a Salesforce or a HubSpot CRM at the very last minute? And why are they doing those things? And are there ways to do it differently or better? So I'm actually going to have Jeff talk through some CRM basics and the process he's gone through in getting the AlayaCare team to adopt their CRM and use it really effectively.
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks, Julie. If I look at the progression of AlayaCare, we're now at over 160 people. And when I started a year and a half ago, I was employee number 75. And the sales team was 3 people. And so I would say that the product that we had exceeded. You don't normally have 75 people and just 3 people in sales, and then within the sales team there really wasn't any infrastructure. And so I sort of was the first kind of outbound salesperson, and the database had grown to 19,000 contacts. but there was no one there to really be the librarian, and there wasn't really a corporate culture. So I made a note here when you said living out of your email. That was the culture. And so on top of that, there was a migration from Salesforce to HubSpot. And data migrations don't always go according to plan. So whatever notes were actually included in the previous CRM, they never got transposed. And so it was, on some days, it was as bad as me calling existing clients, because my workflow was that I wanted to come in and contact the people that had some brand awareness with AlayaCare. So I would sort of pick the people that have been to our website in the past 3 months, and that was one of my criteria for filtering a list and then reaching out to people. And it just became really apparent to me that amongst those 19,000 leads, most of them were acquired through acquiring email lists. No one had taken the time to create corresponding companies. And then all these contacts really just kind of lived on their own. And if you made a positive connection with one contact, there was no central spot for a note or a call note to live, so that everyone could go to a company and do a check-in and see who has spoken to who. So we could have 20 separate contacts at a nice sized company, and you could have 20 different people at your organization all talking to those 20 contacts out there without there being any sort of cross sharing of information. So that was one of the things that when I came on board was to sort of be that enforcer of the new rules and come up with the strategy on what we're going to track and measure, because what gets measured gets done, and just figure out a way how we can actually work together as a team. And we even struggle with it as well. It's a real challenge to go from people living within their outlook and going about their regular day to changing the culture such that it's for the larger accounts, it's a team-based sport and everyone plays a role. And we still struggle to this day with people that need to fill in certain fields in certain ways, just because when you come up with the constitution that you write on how you're going to structure your data and then what reports it's going to generate from there, the real challenge is to have everyone on your team understand every nuance. And we still run into challenges, so everyone's getting better at it. But when you're moving fast and fixing things, and you start to take time and try to teach people about the minutia of why a certain field needs to be filled in a certain way, which will lead to a certain report, maybe not even now, but a year or two down the road, it really is rampant throughout the whole sales team that you need to have everyone rowing in the same direction. Is there anything else you want to cover on this slide?
Jeff, yeah, I was about to ask you, what are some of the impact points that you've seen as CRM adoption has expanded for your team?
So here's a great example. When I started, you always have that rookie enthusiasm when you come in, and I just said, let's go after the biggest companies in the business. And I looked up the top 10 companies, and I start making some calls and try to make heads of tails of who we've made progress with, and then I'll report to the VP, hey, we have 130 contacts at this one company that has 700 locations. Do you know who I should contact over there? And his response is, oh, we've been talking to them for 3 years. And I'm not surprised, because of course we would have reached out to them by now. But it's a perfect example of 3 people that are just running as fast as they can, and there was no sort of a structured plan to sort of take what they have buried deep in their minds and have it as a kind of a knowledge transfer system, so that new people coming in can quickly be up to speed on what needs to be known about a company. So in that particular case, I extracted what I needed to know from him. I went to the company level. I pinned a note, and then I hit the button that shares it down to all of the contacts. And then as we've filled out our sales team, no one needs to relay that information to the new folks. We've got a system in place, and now that that knowledge just gets transferred automatically.
Yeah, I love that. And I really love your point about just making sure some simple things are happening, like contacts and accounts being used and used effectively so that the information is really clear. I would say that's one of the biggest challenges I've seen, is just some of those mechanics in CRM and making sure that everyone is using the same object in the same way and across the board is getting applied is just so important. So that's the basic to get right first, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, especially with commission-based people, that you know, they're not always the most meticulous, and they are productive, and they're always moving on to the next thing. And so for them to take extra time to make sure that fields are filled in properly, it's not always completely aligned to how fast that they want to move. So it's just important to make sure that, you know, you've got someone at least doing cleanup all the time, but ideally it's just so ingrained within everyone that, you know, everyone struggles with unclean data, right? And there's no such thing as having, you know, perfect, clean data, but as long as you have some fundamentals that are in place. So I drew this analogy of the champagne cascade. So if you imagine when you create a pyramid out of champagne bottles, and you pour the champagne into the top glass, and it all flows down, and it continues to flow down right to the very bottom. And there really is one top of the champagne pyramid, and that's the company. And then any new contacts that are added just need to be attached to the company, and then that way there, it's all collected into one cluster. And then whatever the whole team needs to know about that company, it should all reside in the notes section at the company level. And then even if those notes aren't shared down to the contacts, at least it's this hub and spoke system where everyone knows where they need to go to one spot to find all the information that they need to have.
I love it. So once we talk about having those basics set up, we really talk about some next stage tools like sales engagement solutions that help you continue working smarter as a sales team. So sales engagement solutions are tools like HubSpot Sales, Outreach. They're really big tools with a lot of rich features that at the end of the day, help you measure, improve the productivity of your team, use data to sell smarter, automate some of your really repetitive sales tasks, and then focus on the right leads at the right time. So these are tools with really rich feature sets that are going to help you cover a lot of ground and really help your team prioritize focus in the right area. And when you start implementing some of these things, that's really where you see some next level sales enablement activity happening. So there are a number of tools out there with some overlapping features and some really cool, unique features. We're going to talk through three different features that are common in these tools. And as you look at them and consider them, you'll see how they are similar and different and what might be the best for you. So the first that we'd like to talk through is a feature called sequences. And this is a feature, we have two different screenshots here, one from Outreach, one from HubSpot Sales. But they help you automate emails and tasks that can be triggered by a sales rep or a business development rep, sales development rep. The things like, oh, I need to follow up and send a manual email in a day. I want to send an automated email here. I want a task for a phone call coming up on day 5. That workflow that people tend to get into as they're touching contacts, they take and make it a little bit more automated. And automation is great because it helps us work faster, get more done, right? All of those like good 2019 things. The other features of tools like sequences is that when these systems trigger emails, you'll actually get some of the same email performance statistics from your sales emails that you would typically expect from a marketing or batch email. So you can start to see things like open rates, click-through rates, and number of replies or responses on emails that really are one-to-one emails, and you can see some global trends. So if you know that your BDRs send an email one in their sales process that's like a subject line, something like connecting to learn more about our product, and you see that maybe the open rate for that email is at about 5%, you might want to rethink, how could we name this email differently to get more people to open it? Because ultimately, if no one's opening my email, am I even making that touch point? Like, is it as effective as it could be? No. And then one of my favorite features of these sequences, which makes them much preferable to like an automated workflow that you might use in your marketing automation system, is they're usually intelligent enough, and HubSpot and Outreach are so intelligent enough to actually remove contacts who reply to an email or respond from automation, so that they're not continuing to receive this drip type campaign when they've already gotten back to you and said something, whether that's, hey, I'm interested, let's set up a call next week, or now's not the right time, can we revisit this in 2 months? So definitely super powerful. Jeff, did you have any specific use cases on sequences that have come up in the last couple weeks for you?
Yeah, 100%. So I handle all of the inbound demo requests, and just the nature of our position in the marketplace, we disqualify, or folks that come to us sort of self-disqualify in about 85% of the cases. For a couple of reasons, price being one of them, and the second one being we're a good fit for Medicaid, not for Medicare. But we still have to go through that dance of having a chat and figuring out if, are they private duty or are they home health? And I have an email sequence where when I see the details provided on the form that's been filled out, and I say, well, there's probably 95% chance this is not a good fit, I can make the decision to pick up the phone and call them. And I can make the decision to put them into an email sequence. Now, that email sequence typically says, hey, these are the questions that I'm going to need to ask you prior to us just going ahead and booking a demo. And here are the things you should know about AlayaCare as well. And so folks will get anywhere from 3 to 5 emails, depending on the sequence that I set up. And because I've judged it to be a lower priority compared to something that comes in and I say, wow, this is great. We've been calling these guys forever. We know we'd love to do business and they're an ideal customer. Those guys will for sure get a phone call. But the ones that we're pretty sure it's not going to be a fit, I can decide, hey, let's let the automation take care of it. And there's a good chance they're going to reply back and let me know one way or another. And we track all of that as well. So there are cases where, it looks like it's not going to be a good fit, and I've put them through a 5 email sequence, and I can tell that they've opened up every single email, and they're not taking a next step. They probably have found out the information in my email that they know they're not a good fit. They haven't done me the courtesy of replying, but I can see that they're seeing all my emails and deciding not to reply. So I can choose to pick up the phone, maybe leave them a voicemail or just verify once, or I could choose to say, let's move on from this, and I can tag it appropriately in the database under a category of, not eligible because of ideal customer profile or because of size, and then they won't show up in future reports of leads that we'd like to sort of take a look at. With yeah, and I guess one more thing, Julie, is with respect to the sequences as well, is they're really a great bridge between one-on-one emails that take up a lot of time and a sort of over the course of a year marketing, the marketing emails that go out. So in the case of someone that is in this category of, hey, they would love to do business with us, but they've indicated that they're probably not going to be in a buying cycle for another year or two, you can really space out these one-on-one emails that are within a sequence. So I've got a collection of different videos that show different modules. And so a good use case of that is someone that says, hey, give me a call in about a year. And then I decide to put that person into a 4-email sequence that has videos, and each email has a separate 1 or 2 minute view of AlayaCare, and it's just kind of an FYI video. So in that prospect's mind, I'm getting credit for staying in touch, and certainly it did take the effort to set up that sequence to begin with, but really it's a string of templates that are already prepackaged, and it allows me to sort of stay in touch with them on autopilot, and then the real task is set for whenever it is, a year from now, for an actual live phone call.
I love that use case and that foreshadowing from when we talk about video and sales enablement later in this presentation. So Jeff, I know you said, one-to-one emails can definitely be time consuming, but there are certainly times, I'm sure, when you and your team still send them. And in these cases, there are a number of email tracking tools that can be really helpful for these one-to-one emails, and you can see how your contacts are interacting with the emails that you sent. So things like when a contact opens, reopens, clicks, or re-clicks an email can be super powerful. And this is actually one of the very first sales enablement tools that I recommend teams start using because they tend to be really easy to install, especially if you're using G Suite and Gmail for your email, but even on top of something like Outlook. And you can get these notifications that come up when these email activities happen, when contacts revisit your website, and the inbox integration tends to be super powerful and helpful. And it's the type of tool where reps can see some quick wins and they're excited to do a little bit more. How does your team use email tracking, Jeff?
Yeah, so we're on HubSpot. And basically, so our basic process is that we run these little campaigns, right? So if I'm going to reach out to you, what we used to do is we would say, well, I'll call you once a week for 4 weeks, and I'll leave you 4 voicemails, and each voicemail will be accompanied by an email. And after 4 weeks, if you're not interested, I'll put you on the back burner. You're probably just not going through a sales cycle right now, and I'll leave you alone for 6 months, and then I'll review. And what the email tracking has really allowed us to do is we sort of view it as if someone is opening our emails and then clicking on either the video that we've put into the email or one of the video links that we include in our email signature, we take that as, hey, they're interested enough to actually click on something that we've provided for them. So we're going to dynamically, on the fly here, condense that cadence of our sequence. So if I have you, if I'm going to call you every Monday for 1 month, but as soon as I send the email through on the Monday, I'm now going to shorten that up, and I'm going to figure out what to do on the fly. So if I still don't know if you're a good fit for our company, but I know that you seem to be somewhat interested, I might just condense so that the email to go out, email number 2, will now go out to you on the Tuesday or the Wednesday, and then I'll continue to watch it. Or I might actually call you back a day or 2 after I know that you've clicked on the video, just to check in and follow up. And you wouldn't have otherwise received that phone call, but it's sort of like you're almost putting your hand up that you might be interested here, and so I'm going to try to be in the right place at the right time.
Excellent. So another one of these sales engagement tools or tools within a sales engagement solution is meeting booking. These tools that let prospects choose a date and time to meet with you, where you can automatically send a calendar invite and conferencing information. and then create some new contacts if this information isn't already in your database. I actually use a few different meeting booking solutions myself. HubSpot Meetings is a great one. You can also use a tool like Calendly if you don't have a bigger solution to draw from, but not just for sales, for really anything. If you aren't using a meeting booking tool like this, I can't recommend it enough. Jeff, I'm sure you feel the same way.
Yeah, so we use the HubSpot one, and I actually have it included in my email signature. And I've had cases where, I have someone just in an email sequence, and I have yet to actually pick up the phone, and I'm in the right place at the right time with my email, and they go ahead and they book a time for a 15-minute call, and it doesn't get more efficient than that. So I haven't looked into it. Calendly is free as well, right? It's a freemium model.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so is You Can Book Me.
Okay.
Yes, those are different tools that I've used. I think the best thing about having a solution like HubSpot Sales that includes it is this idea of having your new contacts created in your database. If for some reason your email gets forwarded and someone else books it for you, you'll already have someone in that tool, potentially in your CRM, just because they booked a meeting with you, and you don't have to go back and then enter them manually or do that work. So when things are really easy, both for the prospect and for the sales team, that makes adoption a lot simpler too.
So one thing I've done with my meeting link as well is for the folks that we connect with on LinkedIn and we send messages there, because it's just your domain /meeting/ your name. You can drop it in as a link, and if someone on LinkedIn is interested in your outreach to them, I say, hey, if this is worth your time, here's my calendar link. So then there's no back and forth. They just look at your message, they like what you have to say, they click on that right from LinkedIn, it pops open this landing page, and then they just pick a time.
It's just so simple. So really, when we look at the big picture of these sales engagement solutions, we're looking at tools that are feature rich, a lot of different tools within the tool that you can introduce to your team and adopt. We've only highlighted a few of them, but there are so many kind of cool futuristic things that you can do today. Really, these solutions should integrate with your CRM and integrate with marketing automation so that everything is really tightly aligned and your team is truly enabled to do more with their time. And then you can go back and you can tie together some of these sales activities with things like marketing campaigns and actual revenue generated, because you're really building out this closed loop by introducing some of these tools in more of an all-in-one. So another solution that is certainly worth talking about in this context is call tracking and call recording as well. So two solutions for this are things like CallRail and Gong. CallRail is a full call tracking solution. Gong really focuses on call tracking and recording, and they help you measure your call and team performance so you can listen into calls, hear what is happening. You can see where your best calls are coming from, and then instruct and train your team to prioritize calls from those sources. You can revert and listen back to conversations that have been recorded. And they can also be ways to kind of extend your time and help train your sales team. So a rep can be on a call with a prospect more one-on-one, but it's automatically recorded. And then you can step in and listen and coach from there versus having an army of folks on the phone.
So Julie, as well, in the technologies we've looked at, there's also the Whisperer feature where you can be on a call and the sales leader could be speaking to you, and it's only communicated to you, so the person on the other end doesn't hear. So it's like they're in the room with you, just telling you what to say next. There's also transfer options where you can sort of, you get a question that you can't quite answer, you can actually see who's available and say, oh, you know what, let me pass you over to this person. They're gonna know how to answer that. And one thing I just came across recently that we're looking at, and this is sort of It's an alternative to a chat bot, and that's, have you heard of Call Page?
I have.
So I did the Call Page experience on the Call Page. So it's callpage.io. And basically it's a chatbot that just says, hey, do you have any questions? Put your phone number here and we will call you in 26 seconds. And I was so intrigued by that, and I put in my phone number, and then there's this clock that pops up, and it's a 26-second countdown. And then what ends up happening on the back end is my phone number gets however many people they have on their list. Everyone gets a phone call at the same time by the technology. The first person to answer is connected, and what happens immediately is it starts dialing the number I've put in. And talk about something that's really interesting in terms of, if someone's on a website and they're kind of frustrated and they don't want to call in just to be on hold and they're not sure if they're going to be put through to someone or whatnot, it's a we call you solution. And chatbots are great, but there's not always a person on the other end. Usually it's sort of like some bot that's designed to help you find your answer, but usually it ends up being, well, leave your phone number or your email and we'll get back to you. And this is a sort of an auction of your phone number that goes out to everyone that's on the list, and whoever's available answers it, and then you actually get to speak with someone in less than 30 seconds. So I thought that was super cool technology.
Definitely, there are just so many good options out there today, and some really cool features available, and we wanted to highlight a few more of those. So one really interesting capability that call tracking solutions have today is call scribing and call scoring. So just like you would take notes on a call, or you might use automation to score your leads in your marketing automation platform, you can also score your calls. So these features allow you to search a transcribed directory of recorded calls, so you can see how many times prospects use certain words. So an example here that you'll see on the right is, are your prospects or reps saying things like appointment, demo, discount code with any particular frequency? Or do you want to listen back to any calls where maybe someone on your sales or service team mentioned a discount, and see kind of what the context was and if that is effective or not? You can also search your transcriptions for FAQs from your prospects. So what questions are coming up the most? Are there things you can do to help answer those questions and take up less time on the phone? Are there marketing materials that you can create, or sales enablement collateral that's missing overall from your prospect, from your process? You can also identify some target keywords that help mark your calls as being specifically sales calls, say, versus a service call, or really well qualified, and help identify what's working. And what's really cool is you can see which sources are giving you the most qualified calls. And this is, again, like we said earlier, what helps with this overall prioritization. So are you getting a lot of calls from a number that is in Google Ads versus print materials? And does that mean, someone who is clicking through from ads should be kind of bumped up in your queue a little bit and be a higher priority lead, because those tend to close more frequently or lead to appointments and demos more frequently?
Yeah, that's great. And I've seen a couple of studies as well, and there's no surprise here, but what's also been shown is that the ineffective salespeople speak about 70% of the time, and the top salespeople speak 40% of the time. So obviously, sales is more about listening than it is about speaking. And one of the other things that have come out of one of these studies done with this technology is it really pinpointed when effective salespeople bring up price. And it was really skewed towards the latter stages of the conversation. And I think the lesson there is to sort of, if you're a sales manager, you're usually not really there in the weeds with the folks that are having the conversations, and bringing up and answering questions on price too early is really an indicator of not really selling the full value and sort of acquiescing to the prospects or the client's questions on price, rather than sort of managing that conversation and addressing price after all of the potential features and benefits have been discussed up front.
Without a doubt. So another feature that we mentioned earlier is recorded calls, and automatic call recording is just so valuable. I know that as a strategist and consultant here at SmartBug, I often ask to record calls on the service and delivery side of the business, and it's so easy to forget when you want to capture this information and really have it to listen back to later, but you're in the moment of the call and you're so excited, and all of a sudden you're halfway through and you didn't start that recording and ask for permission. So tools like Gong actually do this automatically. They ask for and provide that consent notification that legally is required. And then all of a sudden you have this great log of calls that you can listen back to. As a sales leader, you can provide feedback to your team, and you can also identify, hey, this is a great sales call, and actually share that out. And Jen Spencer, who is our VP of Sales and Marketing here, actually did that really recently. She shared a great call that one of her sales reps had, really talking about some goals and strategy with the client. And it turned out to be something that our service team would have benefited from hearing too. And because she had that recording, she could really easily share a link in an email and get it over to the team, and we could listen in. So another wonderful feature, and this I feel like is a recurring theme throughout this presentation, is that today's call recording solutions actually have CRM integration. So a tool like CallRail will integrate directly with a CRM like HubSpot, and you can start pairing together those calls and the contacts and companies associated with them. And you'll see here on the right-hand side an example of a contact that has a call recording link. You can see how long that call lasts, what the first source of that contact was, in this case, Facebook ads, and some other information about the call. So when you're using a solution like this, you can really gain some efficiency in terms of listening back to those calls. You're not searching through files, you're not going through a database, you're just going directly to the contact as you would when you're using CRM on a day-to-day basis. And then you can also see how calls have factored into your sales process and closed deals, because you're able to see like how many phone calls this contact had before they became an appointment, before they closed, and that can be really valuable. And then, of course, call analytics. I am a marketer at heart, and I love to see the data. So whenever I can see where calls come in, where they spike, where they slow down, what days are the busiest, whether we're getting a lot of repeat calls or first-time callers, can be really valuable, especially in terms of something as simple as availability, right? Do we need to have more people to take these calls that are coming in, or are there days maybe where we can spend more time doing outbound calling or more times of the day, right? So in this case, when we look at calls by hour, things really slow down kind of in that 2 to 3 o'clock area, which I know can be a little bit of a slump in the day for many of us. So is that an opportunity to have the team start placing some outbound calls because they know folks are a little less likely to be on the phone to begin with? You can also see with some call analytics, if your team is missing calls, if they're, you can get more analytics tracking on the keywords being used in conversations, and you can see things like which sales reps are making the most calls, right? That tends to be a really important metric. Are people calling enough? Or are people making a lot of calls but not booking a lot of demos? And then are there opportunities to go back to like your call recordings and say what's happening on those calls? And is there a training opportunity here to help someone make more connections? So big picture, recording your calls is powerful. If you have call tracking that is integrated with your CRM, you can really maximize performance. And as a bonus, lots of call tracking solutions don't just track and record calls, they actually give you pretty robust analytics, and you can use that data to help empower more content and enablement, so to speak, in your sales process and for your marketing team. So you can really close the loop by just listening back, searching back, reading through, and having this call information that is so rich and so valuable. So I know, Jeff, you foreshadowed video for us earlier, and we have arrived. Video is just beyond trendy right now. It's becoming an incredibly valuable connection point in this world where we're not selling face-to-face anymore, right? That's such an old idea, but really a lot can happen over the phone, and getting a personal touch on video can be really helpful. And I know, Jeff, you've used many video solutions and use them many ways. I'm actually going to let you talk through some of these use cases and the rest of the video part of the presentation.
Sure. So I'm on both sides of the coin as well. So I receive quite a bit of solicitation, and what I do find is that everyone uses the automation, but the automation really is it's not going to write good copy for you, and it's not going to, you still have to come up with a compelling message. And likewise with video, you could shoot some videos and send them out. It's still, you know, you still have to have a great message for someone, but at least with video, number one is it really stands out because it requires work, right? It's something that it's a lot harder to scale. So you could shoot evergreen videos and you could send those out, and that's a bit of a solution to be able to scale it. But then you can also go hyper personalized. So for example, prior to our webinar here, we exchanged personalized videos, and that was a lot of fun. It was great. And so we do both. And what I would say is we have different things that we pull in depending on where a company might be at the stage of the funnel. So for example, at the very front end of the funnel, we now have 30,000 companies that we're trying to get in touch with, and our sales team has only grown by another 3 people. So we still have it's like trying to drink from a fire hydrant. So we have a power dialer that does that first step of us trying to have that initial conversation with folks, just to see if they're a good fit, and then secondly, when they might be in a buying cycle. And then the next step would be combining the automation with, we've shot these 5 evergreen videos that are the solution to the top 5 problems that we find that people have within the business. So it's getting a little bit more personalized, but we're still doing it at a fairly large scale. And then once we hit the stage where you know, we've determined that someone's probably a good customer fit and they might be in a buying cycle, and through the email tracking, we can see they're what we call email openers. It's a very creative term we've slapped on them. And then we've determined, hey, it's, you know, they're a good fit, the timing might be right, and we know that we can actually get our message through to them by email. That's where we'll do these campaigns where we'll focus on someone, and we still pick up the phone. Our target market still wants to have a conversation, and then we will introduce ourselves with a customized vidyard so that they can actually put a face to the name, and it shows that we're doing more research on them, and we're putting out a stronger effort than just you know, sort of hammering people with some templated message. And then what we'll do is, if we're starting to get some traction and some engagement, we'll make another couple of attempts with other videos to try to edutain them. So we're trying to get them to like us at the same time as we're speaking about them, and we're speaking about what we think their pain may be, and how we can solve that. So this is an example of, actually, I wanted to start off just by actually showing another use case. We've got remote workers, and here's a case. This is a look inside our HubSpot, and we have some people, tying back to what we had talked about earlier about being the librarian of the database and trying to make sure everyone's on the same page on all of the little nuances of how each field needs to be updated in certain ways and why that's the case. You can use a tool like Wistia or Vidyard or BombBomb to screencast something within your own database, and 1 minute later you've got something that will live forever. It's very visual. You can send it to multiple people. And so what I do is I will just say, hey guys, we really need to have this field over here updated. Here are your options. Here's why you would update these fields. And that's it. And then the landing page just gets generated in a span of maybe 4 or 5 seconds. And then I just copy that link, and then I'll just send it by email or by Slack. The next one is an example of our outbound efforts. This is, it's a little tongue-in-cheek, and you can see here that the click-through rate is pretty high, and we do get people that are sort of instantly disarmed. And the magic here is we just find a way to make sure that we get them to the top of the results. So it's usually their name plus their company name plus LinkedIn or what have you. And then you type in something that you think will capture their interest. It'll be a little bit flattering. We find that these videos go a little bit viral within the companies because they just say, hey, look, this is kind of funny. This is a unique approach. And so we get a lot of opens and clicks. And what ends up happening is we've called companies where a receptionist, when they ask who's calling and you say who's calling, they start laughing and they say, I've seen your video, that was cute. And next thing you know, you've earned your way into a phone conversation with that person compared to just being someone who's randomly cold calling. So this is as goofy as it gets. We, the actual video is very genuine, and we sort of, in a funny way, we get the click, and then we just say, hey, look, we really think that we're a good fit based on what we see on your website. We have a couple of questions for you that are X, Y, and Z, and this is why we think it would be a good match. And so really quickly, they sort of get to the point where when we're at a trade show and people come up to our booth, everything always goes well because we're just, we're sort of genuine. And the best way to relay that is to shoot a short video for somebody. The next approach is rather similar, but this makes it a lot more personalized. And this was an example of someone who I determined was a good fit, and he was someone who always checked and opened every email. And you can see I've put the box around that feedback within HubSpot that shows that I got 30 opens and 4 clicks. So in my mind, that's pretty warm. And he knows exactly who we are. And we have Sales Navigator in LinkedIn. And so when you click on someone's bio, there's a little button that says read more. And what happens is that it sort of grays out the rest of the profile. And you get this clean white box, which provides a perfect spot for you to sort of point something out within what they are saying, telling the world about themselves. And in this case, he had made a comment about how he loves to stay on top of innovative new technologies. And by the time he sort of opened but did not reply to my other outreaches. And this was just kind of a warm, genuine outreach to say, hey, look, I can see here that you're this kind of person, and I think we blend well with this kind of person. And this is going to be my last outreach, but I really just think this is, it was sort of my best foot forward. And he replied and said, okay, great. I had requested a meeting at his office, and it worked.
And go ahead, Jeff.
I was just going to say, the effort required to do this, it really was no more work than leaving a voicemail. right? It's certainly more work than just setting up a regular sequence, but the impact, the great thing about setting up the automation is you can be in so many different places at the same time. The challenge with it is you're sacrificing intensity, right? You have a lot of reach, but it's going to be fairly generic. This is super high touch, right? So that's why you can't just do this for start at A and end up at Z in your database. You have to pre-qualify that you think it's going to be a good fit for your business, and then you also have to it becomes one step at a time. You really sort of filter down. So I only did this to him because I knew that the message was going to get through, that I was on the website. It's a high-tech enabled sort of home care agency, and I knew from HubSpot that he was a guy that would open up all of his emails. And so I knew that the investment of doing something a little bit more impactful and spending a little bit more time was going to be worth the time invested.
Absolutely. And I had the privilege of receiving a video from Jeff as we were planning this webinar. And it was just such a, I'll say even for me as the not prospect, it was both thoughtful and high impact. And I thought to myself, wow, if he were trying to sell me something right now, I'd be really excited to call him. I'd be really excited to talk more. So they're definitely super powerful.
So to give, I don't know what it's like in your inbox when people are trying to sell you things, but there's an agency in Massachusetts that is a HubSpot partner that they had reached out to me, and Vidyard was one of their steps. And it's so rare for me to get a Vidyard that I click on each one because I want to see what they have to say. And what's funny is it's so easy to be put off by people that just fill up your inbox or even your voicemail. But as soon as you actually see a person and they've got this genuine message and they're reaching out to you and introducing themselves, it's pretty hard to be annoyed by them. Particularly, there's such a great opportunity right now where 3-4 years from now, everyone's inbox might be cluttered with videos, and it might be that marketers ruin everything. And so we might get to the point where everyone's inbox, not only are we all at 122 emails per day, but they're all videos and we don't have time to watch all these videos. Right now, it is such a rarity to find a video in your inbox that it's such a differentiator. And the key to success is to be doing something before everyone else does it.
Absolutely. So, Jeff, we have just about 5 minutes now till the top of the hour, and I'd love for you to kind of walk through a little bit. If everyone is asking themselves, how do I get started with video? Are you okay if I jump ahead to the section?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah. Yeah, so it's, my background is not in any of this stuff. I just kind of learned it. And the first step is just Google Chrome Web Store. You're gonna want to download Chrome first of all if you use Windows, if you use Explorer. And then within the Chrome Web Store, the two products that I would recommend are Vidyard's product and Wistia's product. Right, so the actual names are, one is Go Video, and then the other one is called Soapbox. They're both easy to use. There's really just one feature that's kind of different, that it depends on what your personal preference is. It was really a coin toss for what we were going to use at AlayaCare. And if you go to the next slide, after you've typed in Go Video or Soapbox, you just sign up you just put in your email address and a password, and then within Chrome, that little button appears. It's just their little mascot. And then when you want to record something, you just hit that, and then there'll be a record button. And that's really as simple as it gets. It will either record your webcam, so it's just you, or it will record what's on your screen with you in the bottom. And so that's what I usually do, because I don't want my outreaches just to be me by myself. I want to be on someone's LinkedIn page or their company page, or an article they were referenced in, or an article that they might find useful, as an example.
I love it. So we have had just a couple questions come in throughout the presentation, and I would love to answer them. The first one is, Jeff, you said there was one little feature that was the difference for you between Vidyard and SmartBug. What was the decision maker?
It really came down to what we ended up using first. If you skip ahead one or two, you can actually see the feature in Wistia. Keep going. Yeah, right here. So Wistia allows you to actually do a little bit of editing after you shoot. So the challenge with these videos is usually you're scrambling near the end to turn off. It's like at the end of a Zoom meeting where everyone's trying to exit the meeting, and it's a little awkward. Wistia allows you to do a little bit of editing at the front and the back. And then secondly, you see this bar along the bottom. You can choose to toggle between, you see how this guy takes up about 1/3 of the viewing space? You can toggle between him being the entire picture or the screen being the entire picture, and back to him being just 1/3. So if you want to make a point and you're saying, hey, look, I'd like to talk to you about this, and then in the editing, you can say, okay, for between 6 seconds and 15 seconds, I want it to go back to my screen, because you might have a presentation up that you want them to see. Just looks a little bit more slick. Whereas with Vidyard, you are always sort of stuck in that circle in the bottom left-hand corner.
Gotcha. And then I think last question before we wrap up is, what do you recommend to sales reps? What do you recommend to actually get sales reps to use these tools? How do you start making some of that cultural change in the organization?
Yeah, I think number one is, you can't argue with success, right? And so one thing that I did, for example, is I took a look at all of our sales qualified leads from our previous year, and cold calling is still our number one. It is still our target market. We're selling a rocket ship, and we're selling it to 45 and 50-year-olds, and we live in a day where email's great, but everyone gets too much email. And I did an analysis of all of our sales qualified leads, how'd they come in. And the number one thing to do is make sure that you're the unbiased scientist, right? It's just because something looks great and cool, the numbers should tell you, what the best approach is. And for us, we were using Vidyard too much because it was taking up too much time, and we needed to do more automation on the front end to help qualify who the prime leads are. And then once we know who those people are, that's where we double down on the sort of higher quality touches, like with video through Vidyard.
I love that. I love that. My other advice would be, don't try to use all of these tools at once. Yeah. Take a crawl, walk, run approach. So if your team is not necessarily using CRM or using CRM correctly, start there and show them how that can be impactful and how they can see some quick wins and small wins from that, and then grow. And just kind of like I mentioned earlier, that email tracking add-on for those one-to-one emails. Your sales team is certainly emailing people already, and if it's something that's really easy to integrate into their workflow, and they can start seeing some success and data right away, you can get buy-in for a lot more initiatives from there. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, and never stop experimenting, right? It's, everything keeps changing. And the people that sit back and think they have it all figured out, their lunch is going to be eaten by, their competitors that are implementing the next great thing.
Definitely. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today. If you have any questions following this webinar, definitely feel free to reach out, and you can find us on social media at SmartBug Media and at AlayaCare. Have a great day.
Thanks for having me on, Julie.
Thanks, Jeff.
Take care.
Bye now.